Committee. My name is Councillor Anne Siren and I am the Vice Chairman of Planning, and I will be chairing this committee meeting this evening. Before we start, for those of you who don't come to this meeting regularly, I think it's helpful to explain who everyone is. On my right are my fellow councillors, and we will be making the decisions this evening. And on my left are the planning officers, and they will be offering us their advice, talking through the cases, and I want to thank them very much for all the preparation that they've done on the papers this evening. At the appropriate point, I will ask the objectors to speak, and then the applicant to speak, and the committee may have questions of them. And we are very strict about who speaks when, so we have quite formal mechanisms for speaking, and unfortunately you're not able to be part of the discussion unless talking through the formal channels. So, turning to the agenda, which I've lost. Thank you. Apologies for absence. Councillor Shorun is running a few minutes late, but he's going to join us for the second case. Declarations of interest. Anyone? No declarations of interest. Oh.
In the case of the Kensington Square Heathrop College, I will recuse myself from being on the panel for that because I have had, even though I haven't expressed opinions, I have had contact with residents in my ward over it. So I will, if that's all right, not sit for that case.
Thank you. And similarly, I will not take part of the discussions on Chelsea Manor Street. I live on Sydney Street, and I've had meetings prior to my appointment to this committee with the residents. There are also a number of applications relating to a property on Sydney Street, which is just across the road from me again, and I don't feel it's appropriate for me to comment on that case. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Anything else? No. Okay. So next we have the minutes of the previous meetings. We have a meeting from the 26th of May. Councillor Mackover, you were at this meeting. Can I take these as a fair record of that meeting? Thank you very much. So those are approved. We do have quite a long agenda for this evening, so I apologise. It's a very packed agenda. We have more items than we'd normally have, so thank you for your patience, and we will try and go through them swiftly, but obviously with all the attention we need to give them. We're going to start with 2 to 4 Kensington Church Street. This is an application for an advertising consent, and there won't be a presentation as we don't have any speakers. But this is a prominent site, and it's been derelict for many years, so I think we're all very happy to see that there's a plan for something to happen with it. And I know that the Camden Ward councillors are also very keen to see that site come back into use. But it's an important case because it's opposite St Mary Abbott's Church. Obviously, that's an important building for us on an important street. And it's a big advertising shroud. So, councillors, anybody have any questions or thoughts about this? No, because there's no speaker. But you can ask questions.
Questions to officers?
Yes.
Yeah.
Really?
Sorry, Chair. There we go.
Oh. Okay, sorry.
Right. Yes. We've a lot of the advertising shrouds seem to go up and then stay up repeatedly. I was just wondering whether officers had any assurances from the applicant of that the works that they intended to do will get completed in the time of the that they've asked for in this temporary permission, and in order to keep them on track, could we put in as an advisory that officers or enforcement may ask to see that progress was being made so that the shroud would come down, advertising would stop within the time frame.
Thank you. Happy to answer the question. So in terms of the needs, they've just seek permission for 1 year to insert the shroud, and there's a condition recommended that after that 1 year the shroud will come down. But as members rightly said, we do see lots of those applications coming back to us. Yeah, we're definitely happy if members think informative is necessary. We can add something along lines that if there will be a future application, we would advise them they seek some schedule of work so we know how long they'll need it for.
I guess the concern is that this doesn't become just a revenue-generating opportunity. I mean, the site's really not had anything on it for years, so I think that's noted. Councillor Taylor-Smith.
No, just to follow up from Councillor Mackett's comment on this, in terms of schedule of works, I mean, have we seen what they're planning to do within the next 12 months so we can benchmark that during the period?
They haven't submitted one with this application. This is the first one on site. The planning permission they're seeking to build is still live, so they're still within the time consent, so they can still implement the permission. We can also add the condition that the planning enforcement team will closely monitor the site for the next year, how actually what kind of works are happening on site alongside the same informative with the work-off schedule.
Well, thank you, and we have one of the Camden Ward councillors here, so hopefully he will work with the enforcement team to make sure that that happens. Okay, so the recommendation is to approve this application at Kensington Church Street. You've all read the papers, you've seen the size of it. It's not the entire site, it's just a portion of it. Can those in favour please show? With that informative? Yeah, with informative. Thank you. So that application is approved. So we will now move on to... Yes? Oh, yes. Councillor Shoreham, please come join us.
Chair, can you just check his declaration?
Ah.
If he's got any.
We've been through the declarations of interest, and could you just say if you have any declarations? Nothing to declare. Okay, so we'll now move on to Olaf Court, which is at 50A Kensington Church Street. And who will be making the presentation? Thank you very much.
That's me. Thank you so much. So this application is seeking retrospective permission for installation of a AC unit to flat 10 and reallocation of already approved condenser to flat 14 and 15, and acoustic fans and roof ventilation. First of all, I would like to draw members' attention to the addendum report. We've received some additional comments, and there are some changes to the report. So this application was deferred. It came to committee back in February. The committee resolved to defer the decision and requested a further review of the submitted noise assessment and detailed objections. The environmental health officer's comments on such concerns, in particular the potential harm arising from all the units when operating at once, and officers to obtain up-to-date site photographs. So I'll just run some slides for members this evening. So we've got a site location plan with the site outline in red. On this plan, we can see the site plan with the proposed AC units, which they're just located over here. This is the proposed elevation and floor plans, showing the proposed new units 4 and 5, and then also number 6. And here we've got the up-to-date photographs, again showing this is the air conditioning number 6, and then 4 and 5. The recommendation is to grant planning permission subject to the recommended conditions. Thank you.
Okay, so I would like to now call the objector, Mr. Michael Monk. Please, would you address the committee? And you'll have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair, councillors, thank you for letting me speak, and I object to this application. I have the support of the 3 ward councillors, and I'm joined this afternoon by Councillor North. My objection is not to air conditioning in principle. This application is for 3 air conditioning units in a courtyard that already contains other plant. Before approving it, the committee should be satisfied that its previous concerns have been properly addressed. This plant proposal has previously been refused and deferred by this committee. The central question today is simple. Has the committee been given enough clear evidence to move from doubt and deferral to approval, particularly on all relevant plant operating together and on the missing technical evidence behind the conclusions? I do not believe it has. The officer's report recommends approval and says the latest review has addressed the committee's concerns, but the evidence quoted in the report does not appear to support that conclusion and hangs largely on evidence witnessed during a site visit. The committee's concern was not simply the impact of one unit operating alone. The concern was the potential harm of all relevant units operating together. The addendum now clarifies that the purpose and scope of the post-deferral site visit. It says that units 1, 2, 4, 5 and 6 were switched off, and then unit 6 alone was switched on and retested. I'm not challenging the observations of unit 6 operating alone. They may be useful as far as they go, but unit 6 cannot be treated as a proxy for units 4 and 5, which are different equipment types. Even if the site visit evidence of unit 6 operating is accepted, it simply does not clarify the potential impact of all relevant units operating together. Then there is a second problem of the missing technical documentation and calculation route. In the material now before the committee, the applicant refers to a technical note dated December 2024, which is said to contain key calculations and combined plant noise. But the planning officer has confirmed that the council has no record of receiving that note and that it has not been published or reviewed. Members and council officers still do not have the applicant's full calculation route from baseline data to conclusion. The documents may identify background and equipment noise levels, but they do not clearly show how those figures have been carried through to the affected residential windows, allowing for distance, screening, reflections, nighttime operation, and all the relevant units operating together. That missing data and calculation route is a significant gap. The evidence should allow the committee and the council officers to follow the reasoning to make its planning decision and not simply accept the applicant's conclusion. In my view, there is insufficient evidence in the latest material to support approval. The evidence has become more fragmented, not clearer. My preferred outcome is refusal so that any future proposal for the plant can come forward cleanly with supporting data and a proper assessment of all relevant plant operating together. On the evidence currently before the committee, I do not believe the approval is justified. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now, as the agent is not here, committee, if you want to ask any questions to the objector, Councillor Marshall.
I'd just like to ask, and I apologise, this is my first planning committee meeting, so if there's something I've missed in the papers. But the original, this is a plan for a retrospective application for equipment that has been installed. And I note from the planning history that there was a refusal in 2024 for the installation of equipment. So it appears to me that there was a refusal for permission to install equipment, the subsequent installation of that equipment, and now a retrospective attempt to regularise that in terms of the planning committee. Is that the correct history of this?
Sorry, is that to me? It's partially correct. They actually installed the equipment before they made the first application that was refused, and it was largely refused in that case because the applicant didn't even bother to do an acoustic survey. So they changed their designs, moved the equipment, and then thought about doing an application afterwards. So even that first application that was refused was a retrospective one, but even then they failed to provide the information.
And then, so just a quick follow-up. So we're talking about equipment that's already in place. Has there been an assessment of the noise levels of all of the relevant equipment? Because a lot of the objections are referring to the fact that the site assessment at the time, most of the other units were switched off. So do we actually know how noisy it is when all of the equipment is working at the same time?
it's a little bit hard to say. The one unit that's on the wall is visible, so you can actually see when that's working. The other 2 units, it's not possible for me personally to say one way or another. I think the flats are empty at the moment, but that's obviously no relevance on whether they're working or not. But in the evidence provided in the addendum just in the last week, it does say that units 4 and 5 were off, so I assume they're off all the time. So we may not actually have witnessed any impact from them as yet, and we still don't know what that may be until they switch them on.
Thank you. So first of all, can I sympathise, obviously, to the worry that this impact might have on you. It's a simple question. I mean, it talks about here about attending the site and everybody concluding that the prevailing ambient noise was barely audible. And it's always been suggested to me, and whether or not this is true, maybe the officers can comment on, that if you can hear one of these things, then it's not compliant. And obviously, I'm conscious that there is some prevention measures going in here. So I suppose my question is that if this doesn't end up with something that's quiet, is that we presumably could enforce. Okay, thank you.
I think that's probably more a question for officers, but yes, you're right.
Thank you. Oh, sorry.
So just so that I'm absolutely clear as well, Mr. Monk, is it the cumulative effect of all of the machines and the noise they make together, plus the visual impact, or is it one or the other that you're more concerned about?
Well, speaking personally, it's not the visual impact because I can only see one unit that's on the wall. There are other flats which I think will probably have a greater visibility, the 2 larger units and the 3.5 metre wall that's being proposed. It's the noise that's concerned, because obviously once the noise is there, I mean, I understand obviously we have the fallback of going to the noise complaints team, but that's kind of a retrospective thing, and you would hope that we wouldn't have to have that in the background. So it's the concern of the noise, and the equipment that's there at the moment has only got approval for daytime operation because it supports the commercial units in the bottom of the building. So no equipment at the moment actually operates overnight. So no, we obviously have a very low baseline as it is. So any new equipment that suddenly is going to be working overnight is obviously going to be even more noticeable. And that's
But just to follow up on what Councillor Taylor-Smith was saying, you can't hear it at the moment. I mean, it's obviously there. We're not sure if it's working or not working, but you can't hear it right now.
I wouldn't like to overstate one way or the other.
Okay. Fair enough. I think we can probably ask a couple of questions to officers now. So just so we're clear about the deferral last time, what were the reasons for the deferral?
Let me bring it back. But members can also see it in the paragraph 1.1 of the officer's report. So the members requested a further review of the submitted environmental noise assessment and detailed objections to ensure there is no missing information. The Council's Environmental Health Officer comment on such concerns, and in particular in the potential harm arising from all the units when operating at once. And third, officers obtain up-to-date site photographs.
Okay, so presumably when the noise assessment was done, it was done considering that there were now 6 or 7 of these units in this area, however many there are. So the cumulative effect was considered?
As part of the noise assessment, the noise assessment have to take into consideration all the background levels and all the background noise as part of the measuring. As part of the site visit that the members referred earlier, the environmental health officer was present at the site visit. Not all the units were turned on at that site visit, but when they turned the, I believe, 6 and 7, then they couldn't really hear any difference between being on and off.
Okay, and just to pick up on Councillor Taylor-Smith's point, and I mean, I've always been on these committees for some years now. Many people complain about air conditioning units, and I completely understand the worry about them. We have more and more of them. But I've never really heard anybody complain about them after they're installed. And if you can hear them, then enforcement will shut them down almost immediately, and you can always speak with your ward councillor to help you with that. So I very, very rarely hear complaints about them. They are obviously allowed, and it has been assessed by our officers. So I don't know if anybody has other questions. Sorry, my mic is not working. So I think we can probably move to a decision on this one. I mean, I completely sympathise with all of Mr. Monk's concerns. I do think there's been some proper scrutiny of this, and I do feel that if there is noise from the air conditioning units, then it's going to be a case for enforcement. I don't see any reasonable mechanism by which we can turn it down. So I think we can move to a decision. The recommendation is to approve the installation of the air conditioning units at Olaf Court. Can those in favour please show? Thank you. So that is approved. Right, now we are going to move on to 232 Kings Road and 18 to 20 Chelsea Manor Street. And who will be making the presentation? Welcome, Ms. Robinson. Please go ahead whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. Before members this evening is an application to amend an already approved scheme that has been implemented, and it is to amend the approved drawings listed in condition 2 of the original consent. The changes would amount primarily to the change in the height of a new building on Chelsea Manor Street, but also a rearrangement of the footprint of the basement level and changes to the facades of the retained buildings. The proposal is recommended for approval, attaching significant weight to the extant previous approval. On the screen before you now is the site location plan of the application site, and on the right-hand side of the scheme approved. This is an aerial view of the site. This is a photograph of the original street view of the building on Chelsea Manor Street, and a street view of the existing building on Kings Road. This is the existing and demolition elevation of Chelsea Manor Street. And this is the previously approved elevation along Chelsea Manor Street. As you can see, there was already a significant increase in floors with the mansard roof above. This is the proposed elevation, so there is no increase in the amount of floors. However, the height of each floor has been increased to make the building more usable and the inside space of a better quality. There's slight amendments to the shape of the mansard roof as well, and some alterations to kind of the detailing of the facade now the design's moved on. The existing and previously approved elevation on Kings Road, and the proposed elevation on Kings Road. This is the previously approved rear elevation along Chelsea Manor Street. So the kind of, the back of the site rather than that street view elevation. And this is the proposed rear elevation through this Section 73 application. Again, you can see revised height of floor levels and some changes to the design of the facade and the mansard roof extension. That's right. Yeah, no, you're right. Did you want me to repeat anything, or you're right? That's fine. Yeah, so this is the previously approved rear elevation to that Chelsea Manor Street building. And this is the proposed rear elevation. So again, some changes to floor height levels that have increased the height of the building overall, some changes to the facade, and some changes to the design of the mansard. There's the previously approved basement floor plans. Only floor plan I'm going to show you because only concerns kind of changes to the basement through this application that's kind of material. And this is the proposed basement floor plans. So the officer's report kind of details the assessment of the proposal. Officers have had regard to the submitted daylight sunlight assessment, and that's thoroughly kind of detailed in section 6 of the report. Given the circumstances of the density of the area and the individual circumstances of the windows and rooms that fail to meet the guidelines, as detailed in the officer's report, the overall benefit of the proposal, one that would increase the Royal Borough's housing stock and improve living conditions would be considered to outweigh the identified harm to the living conditions experienced by neighbouring occupants in terms of the reduction in daylight. The assessment of the parent commission concluded that the proposed building would preserve the character and appearance of the Royal Hospital Conservation Area, the proposed uses and housing mixes would be acceptable, the maximum reasonable amount of affordable housing would be secured through the legal agreement, the development would ensure good living conditions for the occupiers of nearby properties, subject to what I've just said, and subject to the completion of a legal agreement for which was secured and a deed of variation is proposed for this application, the proposals would comply with the relevant development plan policies. The proposed changes by virtue of this application would continue to preserve the character and appearance of the Royal Hospital Conservation Area, living conditions, mitigate against construction disturbances and provide an acceptable level of housing mix of a good standard and provide the maximum reasonable amount of community housing. As such, officers are recommending approval of this application subject to the conditions and the completion of a deed of variation for the legal agreement. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we will now ask the objector. I think there's one objector. Mr. Rod Holliman, where are you? Please, whenever you're ready, you've got 3 minutes to address the committee.
I trust that you have each read the letter from Hereward Solicitors and report by Alpha Planning, which was emailed to you last Friday. I'm speaking today as one of the individuals whose living conditions would be severely diminished by these proposals. Not only my home, 10 other flats in 3 neighbourhood blocks would also have their light significantly harmed by this variation proposal. If you approve the 2.1 metre increase in build height, my home would be plunged into near total permanent darkness, forcing me to rely on artificial light even at midday. This is not a minor technical breach. It is a catastrophic, noticeable loss that would cut my current daylight in more than half. My vertical sky component would reduce to 2.62%. What would it take to refuse granting? A reduction to 1%? To 0%? The applicant attempts to excuse this by claiming my window is inherently constrained and sensitive because it sits under an architectural overhang. However, BRE guidelines are clear. A development cannot use an existing building feature as a shield to justify inflicting further injury. The applicant's report uses a statistical smokescreen. It tries to boast an 84% compliance rate across the windows of Alameda House. But planning applications are not judged on a mathematical average. You cannot offset destroying the living conditions of my home just because the development managed not to destroy the daylight of neighbours further up the building. The harm to my flat would be absolute, and it directly violates RBKC policy CD9. The applicant's planning statement suggests that the design team of the previous owner committed a severe commercial blunder, that they had completely omitted building services, and the height increase would remedy that. We have seen no evidence of that. The applicant openly admits their motivation is a prime location, and not having the desired height would reduce the sellability of the units. It's clear. It's all about the developers' profit margins. They claim that they must increase height to meet the London Plan's 2.5 metre guidelines. But look closely. They aren't stopping at 2.5 metres for 75% gross internal area. They're pushing ceilings to 2.675 metres. If they really want high ceilings, they can do it in a different way, not this proposal. pushing floor height ceilings to 2.65 metres, maximise their profits at the cost of my total darkness and the cost of 11 apartments in 3 other apartment blocks. And also, Section 106 has not been looked at since 2018. There's a lot more money that should be approached from Section 106 has not been considered. They are increasing the cost and value of this build for no benefit to the housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holliman. Okay, so now I will ask the applicant, the agent, to speak to the committee. Where are you? Please introduce yourselves, and then you have 3 minutes to address the committee. Thank you.
I'm Laura Marshall, I'm a planning consultant, and Drew Stedman is a daylight sunlight specialist, and he'll follow on from me. At the beginning of 2025, there was a newly appointed team, and we undertook a process of due diligence of the existing parent permission, and that highlighted the approved design did neglect to take account of key infrastructure for the functioning of the building. Fundamentally, there had been little coordination with services, structure and internal spatial planning, particularly regarding building regulations and compliance with fire regulations. Only 25 centimetres was allocated for service zones, floor structure and floor finishes, which is entirely inadequate. We now have 65 centimetres. Simply, in its currently approved form, it's not achievable. Working in the context of a Section 73 application and the approved description of development, solutions have been found which will allow for the physical, not theoretical, development of the 26 apartments and retail space. While specific shortfalls required attention, it was key that these items were not addressed in isolation, but rather a holistic approach was taken that included the facade detailing to take account of the required eaves height increases across the site. The internal layout was also considered and convoluted circulation space rectified to provide compliant, efficient and attractive layouts. In addition, it was found that the demolition of the Kings Road facade and building was not required, and retrofitting is now proposed, which makes a significant reduction in the amount of demolition. The context of the surrounding area has also changed, which ensures that the required increases in height, whilst remaining at a 5-storey building, sit comfortably within the established streetscape and conservation area, which includes 5- and 7-storey buildings immediately adjacent to and opposite. Key to the evolution of these revised proposals has been the detailed engagement since April 2025 with RPKC officers in 2 formal pre-apps. The officer's report is clear that the proposals, including designed-in mitigation, do preserve the character and appearance of the conservation area. The uses and housing mix are acceptable, as is the provision of affordable housing contribution within the already drafted deed of variation, and do ensure good living conditions for the occupiers of nearby properties during construction and once built.
For daylight and sunlight, the analysis indicates a high compliance rate for the application scheme. The sunlight analysis shows full compliance with the BRE guidelines, with 95% of the windows and rooms meeting the initial daylight criteria, despite the site currently being comparatively undeveloped relative to the immediate surroundings. In that situation, with a proposal more in keeping with the neighbouring buildings, some departures from the BRE's default targets are to be expected, and the guidance advocates flexibility in such circumstances. The small minority outside the BRE's default values are limited to a handful of windows and rooms, many of which are influenced by contextual constraints such as deep recesses or adjacent projections. Again, the BRE explicitly recognises greater effects are to be expected in that context. Nevertheless, the affected windows will retain reasonable daylight, with many also serving rooms with additional windows that meet the guidance. There is an exception with the recessed ground floor window at Alameda House, where the existing levels are already very low due to its heavily constrained position. However, the absolute change in VSC is very small at just 2.9 percentage points, and the majority of the room will continue to receive direct daylight with the proposal in place. Therefore, the scheme performs well overall in its context, in our view, and is considered entirely consistent with reference to the principles of the BRE guidelines.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm sure there are questions. Committee? Councillor Mack.
Thank you. We've heard from the objector about his severe concerns about daylight to his flat, and I think the objector referred to a vertical sky component. I know this is a technical area, but I was looking for the Daylight and Sunlight Advisor just to comment to us up here about what the impact to the rooms will be, because there's, on the one hand, we're hearing it will cut out light and there'll be no light in there. On the other, we're hearing from you that actually that particular room is compromised already, but the actual reduction will be a small percentage point. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem at all. So with regards to that ground floor window, it's heavily recessed beneath the floors above. Effectively, what that does is it cuts out all of the sky that would be visible from a higher, altitude. And the way we try to describe that is if you put a baseball cap on, suddenly you're only able to see at a quite shallow angle straight ahead of you, which means that there's an undue kind of reliance on light at a low angle across the site. In that context, already in the existing condition, the existing light levels are 5.5% for vertical sky components. Now, the BRE guidance recommends, ideally, although this is not normally the case in urban settings, an existing level of 27%. So it's already heavily compromised by that inherent design. And then what we're seeing here is, because it's looking at a very shallow angle across the development site, it's going to be incredibly difficult to get any meaningful massing on the site without encroaching on that to some degree, but the absolute difference is only 2.9% in absolute terms. Obviously, that shows as a high proportion as a percentage relatively, but in absolute terms, it's very small because the existing levels are also small. So that is why we think in that context, it is acceptable, and the BRE does make explicit reference to the impact of projecting structures like balconies or recesses.
So just to follow up on that question, is that is a cumulative effect? That's not the whole, whatever it has permission for before. This is the additional loss of light with the increased height of the mansard roof.
We have only looked at the existing condition versus the proposed application, which is being determined today. So that's the effect that it would have. With that recess in place, given how shallow the angle would have to be across the site, I can't comment on the previous scheme, but if it's of any meaningful height, which I think it was, it would have a similar impact.
Okay. Any other questions? So we will now move on to question. Actually, do we have any questions for the objector? Well, I'll ask a question. Mr. Holloman, so how many of your rooms are affected in the way that you've described? Is it just one room, or is there more than one room?
No, one. So basically, I've got 3 bedrooms on lower ground floor. They're under a light well, so there's poor light anyway, but the bedrooms, it doesn't matter. The only other room in our apartment is this living room, kitchen, dining room area, which is under an overhang. Now look, the light in that room is fantastic, absolutely fantastic. It is not a dull room. This about an overhang will not affect it in absolute terms. It's absolute rubbish. I could show you photos of light. If you go back to the previous granted 2018 building, it did not breach my VSC. It did not affect my daylight distribution at all. It is purely 2.1 metre increase in height that's achieved this. Under the previous granted proposals, in the previous daylight sunlight report, I do not breach the 20% BRE guidelines at all. It is purely this 2.1. I would go on to say that Anstey Horn know that there should be a 2-tier process of reviewing lights, one with the soffit as is, and one hypothetically without the soffit. They didn't do that test. The previous 2018 daylight test by Schroeder-Becks, they did the test with a hypothetical soffit removed, and the VSC was over 27, which is the minimum. It was 28.5%. That shows that the room has got more than adequate access to light. It is their building, it is their 2.1 increase in height that's stopping it. The previous granted planning did not affect and breach standard 20% BRE guidelines. They talk about the mid-teens VSC approach, which is typical for city urban areas, which you may be aware of. My apartment is affected by that. It's sub 16% VSE. It is substantially a terrible light that they're putting me into. And moreover, there's one other apartment that is also affected by their mid-teens 16% test, which they refer to in their planning statement. So they're breaching their own guidelines. They're not publishing and saying what they're doing in their own internal Anstey Horn brochures on BRR guidelines. They're ignoring that.
And what do you say to the 2.6% that's been mentioned in terms of the reduction in light that you're going to have from this?
Well, that's a 52% reduction in VSE. My daylight distribution goes from about 99% in that room. It's a big room. Mm-hmm. It's 8.5 metres wide and about 5 metres deep. We've got 99% current daylight distribution. It reduces by 50%. Now, if you look at my apartment, it's a duplex apartment. The only window that attracts daylight, because every other window in that apartment is either north-facing or in lower ground floor basement for the bedrooms, the only window is this window being affected. We will not get any meaningful daylight at all. 2.62 VSC is near to zero. What does it take for the council to actually say, with that type of reduction, you can't grant planning permission? Does it need to go to zero? Is 1 acceptable? This is crazy. 80%, 27% is the criteria for acceptable light levels under BRE guidelines. This is 2.62%. BRE guidelines say that the developers must take into consideration existing architectural fixtures, like the overhang. They say that in Anstey Horn's own published daylight sunlight reports. They say themselves that existing architectural features must be included. Yet, in the report to you, they've not mentioned that at all. They're not following their own published guidelines. What does it take? Do I need to get to zero for VSC for you guys not to grant it? What's acceptable?
So, I mean, this is a very technical area, and I think it's really important that we properly scrutinise this. Do you have an answer to what Mr. Honeyman's just said about his light reduction in his room that is getting most of the light in his flat?
So, I mean, it is a matter of fact that the existing levels are very low at 5.9%, 5.5%, I should say. If you can imagine that trying to create that visual, that if you've got something straight above that window, you're looking at a very shallow angle across a site, it's going to be very difficult not to create some change in that light level. That change here is 2.9% in absolute terms. That is not normally a kind of a level of daylight amenity that would be really considered to be particularly usable in a space in the same way that you would if you had, you know, light levels towards the upper end of what the BRE considers to be optimal. The absolute change is very small. It's a statistical percentage change which looks at 50% like a high level. The absolute difference between those two in terms of the actual perceived amenity on that VSE test will be very small. There are different planning precedents where inspectors have said 3% or less is considered to be immaterial. I understand the concerns where you have low levels to start with, but ultimately, if that's as a consequence of a recess above, it sort of stymies the site opposite, and the absolute change in reality is very small, and we wouldn't say is going to be particularly perceivable in the way that's being described. And also, there is also the daylight distribution test, which is not showing that the room will be plunged into darkness. It is showing that over half of the room area will still have a direct view of the sky, notwithstanding the fact that there is that deep recess. So it's important to understand, notwithstanding that deep recess, there's still daylight penetrating into that space beyond halfway. And I would say that shows a scheme which is not unreasonably designed, even though that is quite a sensitive constraint that it's faced.
But isn't this all about the context and the number of rooms that get the light? So if there's only one room that's getting meaningful light, to reduce it by that amount, doesn't that play more of a part? And
it's an important point to take into consideration, but I would argue that 3%, less than 3% VSE in absolute terms would not normally be described as meaningful light. But I understand it's all relative, which is why the percentage change comes out as it does. But I think looking at the percentage change is also misleading. So you have to look at both. Look at the absolute change, which is 2.9%. Take into consideration that that's arising because of the fact that it's deeply recessed. If you look at the floor above, they're all meeting the guidance comfortably. That's showing how much that drives the sensitivity of that window. This is something specifically the BRE guidance sets out in its guidance to say that greater changes are likely to be unavoidable when dealing with structures like this. And that's why you have to take it into consideration holistically. That's why it's guidance and not statutory criteria that you have to hit, because otherwise development sites wouldn't be able to come up with appropriate, meaningful design. So, and as I say, the last point is, if you look at the daylight distribution test, it shows that over half of the area will have a direct view of sky. In other words, the sky contour will extend into over half of the room, so it's not going to be plunged into darkness.
Okay, thank you. Right, I think we'll move on to questions to office. I think we're going to move on now. We're going to ask the officers. Thank you. Any questions to officers? Perhaps we'll start with the light and then we'll move on to the other questions.
Yes, probably the same question that everyone will have is officers have looked at the application in detail, and these are very technical reports, and obviously there is a difference of opinion that we're being faced with. How did officers look at this information and get comfortable? From my point of view, I think I do understand the technical arguments that are made by the applicant, and I can see that it's difficult for anyone who's in a flat to look at a number and try and work out what the impact will be on them.
Yep, absolutely. So the report is quite detailed on this section, and for good reason. There is a very technical report that has been submitted in support of this application, and officers have gone through that very carefully and made the assessment, and have been very honest in the report where there have been incursions into existing levels. So we've made an assessment of the current proposal, and on balance have concluded that the harms do not kind of outweigh the benefits, and the reduction results demonstrated that there would be a change, undoubtedly, to some properties, but it would be unlikely to be perceivable when you take all parts of that test into account. So kind of at paragraph 6.33 of the report, that's kind of written with the numbers that we've been talking about, the reduction of the existing value of 5.51, which is quite low already. And then when you actually look at that in real terms, to be the reduction of slightly less than 3% of the visible daylight, it would not be considered as a very perceivable change. I know that when you look at the numbers and when you take kind of objection comments into account, it can seem that way, but based on all of the information that's been provided by the applicant and having regard to kind of the BRE guidance that sets out kind of those issues as written in the report, kind of at 6.22, officers are content that there would be on balance, that there wouldn't be on balance a kind of a reason for refusal based on reduction in daylight or sunlight to neighbouring properties that would kind of, warrant refusal of the application.
And, to answer Mr. Holman, at what point would it not be acceptable? Because if half of its light is going, at what point would we say, no, it's not acceptable? And also, actually, the other question I had is, apparently with the previous scheme, the approved scheme, there wasn't this huge reduction in light. So what is it about this additional 2 metres that is creating such an impact?
Yep, so kind of each scheme has to be assessed on its own merits, and there isn't an absolute kind of, if it gets to this point, then it's a refusal. It's based on the assessment of that daylight sun report, cumulative impacts taken in the round, and when assessed against the BRE guidance, you then balance that against kind of the harms to the living conditions, and you then come to an outcome. It's not a, once it gets to this point, it's a no. It's an assessment of the scheme based on its own merits and of that individual application rather than absolutes. And that's very clear in the BRE guidance as well. With regard to the previous scheme, again, this application is being assessed on its own merits. There has been a fresh daylight sunlight report that's been provided. Officers have assessed that against the HUMs and against the development plan and have recommended to you approval of the scheme for the reasons set out in the report. So, yeah.
Just a technical question for the officers. In terms of, I know there's such a thing as non-statutory private views, and that's not affected here. We're talking about the sunlight, are we? We're talking about the amount of light, not statutory views.
Yeah, so we make an assessment of daylight sunlight in regard to living conditions. I think what you might be referring to is rights of lights, and that's a civil matter that doesn't influence a planning decision.
And there are no other environmental health, no other conservation or environmental health issues that you've noted.
I'm so sorry, I didn't quite catch that.
No, I was trying to see if there were any policies in relation to protection of the non-statutory private views, and have they all been looked at? Maybe I'm not asking the question correctly, but I think you've answered the first one. That's fine. I just wanted to know the distinction between non-statutory private views and if that fell into this in this case at all. But that's the main question I had.
I think with regard to the view from a window, that we haven't got anything in place to protect a particular view. One of the planning judgments would be, with regard to living conditions in this case, alongside daylight and sunlight, would be sense of enclosure. So in terms of how you perceive, the space around you, whether you feel enclosed and so on. And again, officers have assessed that as part of it and haven't concluded that would be a reason for a refusal either. But I think the focus on, rather than on sense of enclosure here, has been on daylight and sunlight, because we did see that as a key issue in this case, albeit one we were satisfied with.
That's very helpful. I just wanted to understand that as I was reading through that. I had some questions, but specifically for the officers. Thank you very much. That's all.
Thank you.
To officers, one more question. It hasn't come up in objectors' comments, but has in some of the documents that we've received. And that's just on the 106, which I just wanted officers to explain how there isn't a new 106, and it looks like from the paperwork that it's because this is an existing implemented scheme, and that would not normally be any negotiation wouldn't be restarted because of these amendments.
Yeah, absolutely. So because this is a Section 73, so a minor material amendment to an already approved and implemented scheme, it's not considered reasonable for us to reopen the negotiations on a Section 106 agreement that's already been signed and completed. So this application merely seeks to make a deed of variation to that approval to tie in the changes that have been made here, mainly just the reference number and kind of ensuring that it's kind of still legally sound rather than reopening any of the assessments or contributions within the legal agreement.
And I think technically we could. It's a brand new planning permission, so you could revisit all of those, but we've given significant weight to the previous extant scheme, and that's been our planning judgment that in this case it's the deed of variation is acceptable.
Okay, are there any other questions? So, colleagues, obviously it's very concerning to hear Mr. Holman's concerns, and it is concerning when people develop near your home, and particularly when they change the height, and the height seems very tall. I listen really carefully to all of these arguments, and my feeling is that the officers have assessed this correctly, that the reduction light is reasonable, given the context and you know, the setup of the flat. I was also concerned about the Section 106 and our ability to review that, but this is an implemented scheme, so we don't have the powers to do that. And actually, I think the Section 106 was pretty good when it was negotiated. So
yeah, we had the power. It was a planning judgment.
A planning judgment. I think I felt quite satisfied with where we were with the 106. So does anybody have any comments or further thoughts? So I think we can move to a decision. The recommendation is to approve the planning application. Can those in favour please show? And those against? So one against. Did you, sorry Max, did you? You did, okay, so.
And subject to the deed of variation.
Sure, so that planning application is approved. Yeah, thank you very much. Let's move on to the next case. Councillor Taylor-Smith.
We just have to, Councillor Taylor-Smith.
He's coming. So the next application is 65 Blenheim Crescent. Who will be presenting that? Thank you, Julia. If everybody is ready.
Perfect.
Let's go ahead. Thank you.
First of all, I would like to bring members' attention again to the addendum report. This application is seeking planning permission for the construction of a rear lower ground floor extension. I'll just run some slides. So this is a site location plan with the property outlined in red. The site to the rear is the listed garden. Then we've got the area view showing the application site when the red dot is. Members can also see the existing context of the group along this part of Blenheim Crescent. And there are a couple of examples further down along the street with an extension and the listed garden to the rear. This is the site photograph showing the application site. Then we've got the existing and proposed site plan with the proposed extension on the bottom with modest extension. And then we've got the existing and proposed rear elevation, again showing the existing bay window and then the proposed extension on the lower ground floor. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we do have a couple of speakers. We have a couple of objectors and then also the applicants. So Ms. Lambert, Miss, I'm going to pronounce your name wrong, Trio. You have 3 minutes, please, to address the committee whenever you're ready.
Before you start the clock ticking, can I say I'm now extremely deaf and the acoustics in this hall are very challenging. I literally can't hear half of what's being said. So forgive me if I ask you all to speak up and if you are asking questions.
We will speak up. Thank you.
Right, well, I assume you've read the Ladbroke Association objections. So what I really want to say is, for those who are not familiar with the Ladbroke estate, it's an early example of town planning built in the mid-19th century. The aim of the designers was to create a rural or Arcadian effect with communal gardens between the rows of houses, beautifully planted and with a backdrop of rear facades that were architecturally distinguished as much as the front facades and could be admired from the garden. Unfortunately, over the past 30 or so years, many of them have been defaced by inappropriate alterations. Planning officers kept saying they couldn't stop this, so we pressed for an amendment to a new policy in the local plan, and we hoped that that would do the trick, but it clearly hasn't. It's been widely ignored, including in this case, and we are really in despair. We really must try to preserve the remains of this handsome terrace and I can only appeal to the committee not to grant this application. These gardens are one of the jewels in the architectural crown of the whole borough. We are particularly concerned about that the proposed extension will destroy existing historic fabric. It might have been more acceptable if the applicant had kept the angled bay at the lower level and extended around it while maintaining the shape. But as it is completely incongruous, and the designers of the estate would be turning in their graves. Now I will turn to my colleague who lives on the square, or on the communal garden, can speak from personal experience.
Hello, I'm speaking as a resident of the Blenheim Elgin Communal Garden and also representing some of my neighbours, one of which lives right opposite 65. While we completely understand why a new resident might want to adapt their new home, we feel this style of extension will harm what makes this terrace and our communal garden so very special. Much of the loveliness of a garden square is in the architecture of the terraces and their rear elevations. All garden squares must be worth preserving, and ours is a long green lawn stretching through the centre of the terraces like a river. It's a shame that these extensions are designed before new residents have had the opportunity to live with and fully appreciate the character of the terraces and garden. By the time they have understood how lovely they are, decisions have often already been made by architects. But there are examples of more sensitive solutions to extra space in our garden, where the extension respects and echoes the form of the original bay, rather than competing with it and carving it up, especially the carving up of the first floor window. I'm also on the committee, and I'm responsible for the garden. And I do also worry about the impact of increased glazing and light spill into the garden. We still have resident bats, as well as a variety of garden birds beyond the usual robin. We do need to keep garden skies as dark as possible.
Thank you very much. So now we will turn to the applicant, which is Miss Rigby. Where are you, Miss Rigby? Please introduce yourself to the committee, and then you have 3 minutes to address us.
Thank you. Hello, everyone, members of the committee, councillors. I'm Anahita Rigby, and I'm here to speak in support of the planning application for a modest lower ground floor extension at 65 Blenheim Crescent. I would like to start by stating that on the 11th of November 2025, we received a Level 2 pre-application document with advice stating, and I quote, "The principle of the lower ground floor extension would likely be acceptable if an application were made. The extension reads as a lightweight traditional conservatory which is acceptable with regard to the character of the building, the listed gardens to the rear and the wider conservation area." I would then like to follow on with the fact that I'm sure you're aware that the council has approved the following lower ground floor extensions on Blenheim Crescent between Ladbroke Grove and Clarendon Road, with on the odd numbered side, and the houses are as follows: number 61, 73, 79, 91 and 93, and that these extensions, with absolutely no disrespect to the designers who have done them, are much more contemporary in style to our modest timber framed lightweight structure. I would then like to address our design principles. Our proposed extension is specifically designed to preserve the character of the conservation area, where we do follow the rhythm of the bay to the T, and I think if you had a look at the extension, the proposed extension, that you can see the rhythm following the ground floor window above, that the material and designs are sympathetic to the existing building and comply fully with the council's guidelines for extensions in conservation areas. The design adds rhythm and proportion which follow elegantly from the floors above. We have not gone for a full width glazed extension, we have broken that rhythm up, which is a bit more traditional. And with that, I would also like to add that we often work with heritage and listed buildings in and outside of London, and we try our utmost to be sympathetic to preserve the character of these properties. I personally am a classicist at heart, and we take design very seriously in our studio, as of course most architects do, and we feel that the design is fitting within its context. I would like to end by politely reminding the committee, as I'm again sure you are aware, that the design has been tentatively agreed by the planning department and that the following statement has been extracted from the planning officer's report. The proposal, given its design, materials, size, scale and location, would continue to preserve the character, appearance and significance of the building, the wider terraced group and the Ladbroke Conservation Area, and would preserve the setting of the registered listed garden in accordance with policies CD1, CD2, CD3, CD4, CD7, CD10 and CD13 of the Local Plan 2024. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Any questions to the objector and the applicant? Councillor Taylor-Smith.
Thank you. Yes, within one of the objections, there's a statement here about one or more of these beautiful bays will be gone. The suggestion, listening to that, are there already quite a few of these bays that have gone? I mean, onto the garden. I just wondered whether or not this will be the first. The reference has been made to contemporary bays already. Thank you.
So I think that was asking whether quite a few are already gone. The terrace is actually in two parts. The longer part in which this building is, I think it's only 2 that have been altered out of, 17 houses or something. One we reckon was granted by mistake during COVID. But if this is granted, it's going to start being absolutely impossible that all the houses will want it, and we'll be ended up with a travesty of what was supposed to be there.
And would the applicant like to just confirm that? I mean, you mentioned that this has been these lower ground floors have been changed in contemporary style.
They absolutely have, but our extension proposes, as I mentioned, a lightweight timber frame structure where the rhythm does follow and echo the existing bay. So we've divided it up. It's not just one full width of glazing, which is typically in the contemporary style. As I said, we are classicists. I'd also like to add that the Ladbroke Association obviously does perform valuable work in the neighbourhood, and I myself have lived in the area for a very long time. But however, in this instance, that it's asking the committee to create a new set of rules based on the idea that these 3 houses in a row, that there is a style that is being disrupted, where I would argue that the style has been disrupted multiple times over the years.
Shall we move on to questions to officers? I have a question. I wanted to ask about the local plan. And I've lost it, here it is.
It's policy, wait a minute.
I've got it. I wanted to ask about the changes that we made to the local plan. And, particularly it says here, in the case of extensions backing onto registered communal gardens, precedent will not be taken from older, ill-fitting existing extensions, etc. So we've particularly put something into our local plan that seemingly prevents this kind of change. And now we're recommending it to be approved. So talk to us about that, please.
Perfect. So in terms of the quote you referenced, Chairwoman, that is within the supporting text to a policy. And it is correct, when there's an extension they're backing onto registered garden, we will not take precedence from the others. However, within the policy itself, it does talk about the setting of the registered garden and how we would preserve it. And one of the points within that policy is where the extensions are proposed to properties backing on the registered communal gardens, they must preserve the significance of views into, from and across the garden, including any impacts from artificial lighting. So in terms of the policy, it doesn't necessarily restrict all the extensions backing onto registered garden. It talks about how they're going to impact on the significance of the listed gardens. Officer, as part of the assessment, they have assessed the impact on the registered garden. Members can take a different view in terms of the harm or no harm to it. But in terms of our assessment, we did come into conclusion that actually having a modest lower ground floor extension in this location would be acceptable.
So I think what you're saying is we put the change into the local plan, but because of the way this has been designed, we think it's okay. I'm just wondering why we put it in if we're then sort of making recommendations against what we've put into the local plan. I do understand it's a balance, but...
Yes, absolutely. In every application, we do assess it on its own merits, and in this case, we've decided the recommendation is that it's not harmful to the registered gardens.
Colleagues, have you got any questions or comments that you'd like to make? Councillor Taylor-Smith.
So again, just seeking additional clarification to 6.10 on the light. I mean, obviously looking at the elevation, the proposed alteration is much larger than the existing.
Yes, that's correct. I'm happy to bring up the plans again so members can... There we go. So we've got the proposed elevation on the right-hand side and then the existing on the left. Again, officers did assess it in terms of the light spillage, and we are content with it. Yes, members can take a different view.
May I ask also, what's the use of that room?
It's a dining room.
Thank you.
Councillor Markova.
Thank you. Just a reflection on seeing, when on committee we see a picture, a rear elevation and a large increase in glazing, there's a temptation to think that that looks very harmful. But how, this is actually only at the lower ground, and I do seem to remember previous cases where it's been argued that the lower ground is less impactful than upper stories. Did that figure in officer consideration?
I think, yes, we would consider the scale and the size and the location of the extension in terms of the impact on the light pollution. And yes, we do agree that the lower ground floor is just less visually prominent than the upper levels.
Oh, no. Okay. Councillor Marshall.
There's been repeated reference to both the light spillage and the visual impact from the gardens. I just wondered if any consideration was given to a planning condition to do with the vegetation screening at the boundary of the property and the communal garden. Was any consideration was given to that, because there's no condition in the application?
Yes, unfortunately we can't really rely on the planting just because it's a living element, so we don't rely on in terms of the impact of it. We have taken into consideration that there is an existing vegetation and there is an existing garden itself, but there wouldn't be something we could condition.
Okay, colleagues, we do need to move this to conclusion, and you know, I kind of grappled with this case, particularly with this addition that we put into the local plan to specifically protect our garden squares and these backs of houses. I mean, obviously we see these sorts of extensions in many houses in our borough at a lower ground floor level, but this I think is a sort of different case. But having said that, I did reach the conclusion that I agreed with the officers in terms of the harm. I think it is in a more traditional style than perhaps some of the other ones that we see in Blenheim Crescent, and I do think it's at lower ground floor level and therefore less visible than it would be if it was sort of higher up. So my conclusion was that I agreed with the officers, but you know, obviously you're free to make your own decisions. So can we move to vote, please? Can those in favour of the recommendation to approve the planning application at Blenheim Crescent, please show. Thank you. So that is approved. Thank you very much. We will move swiftly on. The next application is going to be 14 Lansdowne Crescent. And who will be presenting this?
That's me again.
You again, okay. All right, Julia, so whenever you're ready, please go ahead with your presentation.
Perfect. Again, I would like to bring members' attention to the addendum report. This application is seeking planning permission for a basement extension, plant equipment and some associated works. I'll go through the plans for members. So this is the site location plan with the property outlined in red. Then we've got the area view with the property where the red dot is over here. Then we've got some side photographs. This is the front of the property. Then we've got the back of the property. The property already benefits from the basement extension below this lower ground floor extension. Then this is the site plan showing the proposed basement below the existing lightway. And this is the existing and proposed site plan. Existing and proposed basement, members can see on the left-hand side, that's the existing basement, and then on the right-hand side, that's the proposed basement. Majority of it would be below the existing footprint of the property, with the additional elements going below the light well at the back. Here we've got the existing and proposed lower ground floor extensions. Again, I would like to draw members' attention to the left-hand side, that's the existing light well we saw on the photograph earlier. And the basement will go below it. Here we've got the existing and proposed front elevation, existing and proposed rear elevation, existing and proposed side elevations, and some sections just to show the depth of the basement and the internal changes. So on the right-hand side, we've got the proposed swimming pool with the plant equipment. Then we've got the existing proposed section BB. Again, the green shows the proposed basement. The section CC. And the existing proposed section EE, again showing the extent of the basement going below the property. The recommendation is to grant subject to various conditions, and that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
So we will now move to the objectors. We have two objectors, one objector. Okay, Mr. Ashley, please, you have 3 minutes. Please introduce yourself and yeah, thank you very much.
Sure. Chair, councillors, thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm the owner of the adjoining property at 13 Lansdowne Crescent. I'm objecting to this application, and I'll ask members to look very closely at where this proposal breaches the council's very own policy, and where this report, in my view, works backwards from the decision to grant rather than forwards from the evidence. First, the depth of the basement. Policy CD11 is very clear. It allows a single story only. The supporting text says that's generally 3 to 4 metres with a small extra allowance for a pool. But the officer's own report at paragraph 6.8 states the overall depth is approximately 4.8 metres and 5.8 metres once a concrete slab beneath is counted. That's nearly 50% deeper than the top of your policy range. That is not a small allowance for a pool. In effect, this is a deeper box dug beneath a basement already approved in 2016. So I'd ask each of you before you vote, are you comfortable granting a basement half again as deep as your own policy permits? Because that's what the report's own figures describe. Or do you really wish to set a new precedent in the Royal Borough? Second, the heat pump noise assessment. This permission would regularise an existing rooftop heat pump, a unit for which I can find no record of any consent. If this application is the mechanism approving that said unit, the noise survey needed to measure it actually running alongside the 2 new pumps. It did not. The officer again confirms the existing unit was excluded from the measurements, and the figures relied on are predicted, not measured with all 3 units operating. The cumulative noise of these 3 pumps has never been assessed, and conditions cannot fix evidence that have never been gathered. I'd point out that another application on today's very agenda, Olaf Court, your officers tested an existing unit by physically switching it on and remeasuring. That's exactly what should have happened here, and it didn't. Throughout this report, conditions are being used to defer problems that should defeat the application, not to manage it. 3 further breaches, briefly. The required 1 metre of soil above the basement is not provided. The officer concedes this. The basement appears to exceed 50% of the open garden, again, contrary to CD11 policy. And there was no meaningful consultation with neighbours on the construction traffic management plan, again, contrary to the council's own guidance. To conclude, the depth breaches your very own policy on the officer's own numbers. The noise evidence is incomplete. 3 further requirements are unmet or conceded. I'd respectfully ask you to absolutely refuse the application. However, If the committee is not minded to refuse, I urge you at the very least to defer the decision and require further detailed assessment of the basement depth, the construction impacts and the cumulative plant effects so you can make a fully informed decision that safeguards long-term residents, my neighbours on whose behalf I speak on, many of whom have objected to this application. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. So now I'd like to ask the applicant to speak to the committee.
Thank you, Chair. My name's Lawrence Brooker. I'm a planning director at Turley, speaking on behalf of the applicant's family tonight in relation to the proposal to enlarge and enhance their family home, principally through the delivery of an enlarged basement. Just to recap, the house has an area of existing basement that sits under the side extensions of the house only, and as shown in the presentation, the proposal seeks to extend this under the footprint of the main house and into part of the rear garden area in line with local plan policy to provide the additional living space. The proposal has evolved through pre-application engagement with officers and through pre-submission consultation with neighbouring residents and stakeholders, which has resulted in the depth of the basement pool reducing and the design of the rear elevation evolving, amongst other elements. The design is also conscious of protecting neighbouring residential amenity, including through the siting and design of proposed plant equipment for both the pool and the house itself, with associated conditions on its operation covering acoustics, vibration and odour control, and through construction-related planning conditions based on evolving the already submitted draft CTMP, the construction method statement and other construction-related provisions. I'll now just hand over to Tom to talk through a few design-related points.
Thank you. My name is Tom Croft. I'm one of the architects. We spent some time discussing the project with officers, and I think that they were happy with a lot of the, well, all of the issues that the objector has raised. I mean, in terms of the pool depth, it is compliant. In terms of the unit noise, it is being conditioned, but you know, the conditions are the conventional approval levels that one would expect. The construction management plan, I think it was circulated widely. In draft, yeah. We're very happy with the conditions and we're happy to comply with them all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Committee, have you got questions for the objector and the applicant? Councillor Taylor.
Can I just ask the officers to put the slide up where you can see the net addition that's being proposed by this application? And I just wondered if the applicant could just briefly take us through what are you going to do with the additional space? I mean, there's a lot of reference to additional plant here, etc., but it seems to be quite a large addition, and I wondered what that is in terms of square footage, whether you can tell us.
Hi, Ashley from Thomas Croft Architects. The question's in relation to the underfloor plant space, is it? Sorry. In relation to the underfloor area beside the pool.
What's the net addition of your application in terms of square footage, and what's the principal use of the space that we're looking at through? As I say, it talks about plant, etc. It just seems to be quite a lot more space than plant, but maybe you can elaborate on that.
The space beside the pool in that section is for water filtration plant. So it's tanks and dosers and stuff like that. A lot of kind of valves. That's primarily for the underfloor area, and then there's a air handling plant accommodation that's on the level of the pool beside the pool.
So it's not amenity space, is it?
No. It has a height. It has a floor-to-ceiling height in that section of 1.4 meters. So it couldn't be used for anything other.
Then
so
only for that usage, it's not amenity space.
Yes.
To be clear. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Marshall.
I think we're all very grateful for the air conditioning in the chamber today, and it is Climate Awareness Week. Don't see in any of the proposals any reference to the energy consumption of the proposed plant. What do you have any comments on just how much energy this pool in particular, but also the proposed air source heat pumps and air conditioning units and other additions will be making above and beyond other residential properties in the area?
So while we've provided the spec of the plant, we're not actually required to provide an energy assessment given the scale of the development.
And there is cooling there, can't
There is cooling in the building at the moment, and the air source heat pumps do both the heating and the reverse cooling of the proposal, so it's an efficient system that's completely standard for a domestic project of this scale.
Any other questions? Okay, let's have questions to officers. So, Councillor Mack.
Yes, there's a question to officers. I've often been associated with trying to work out the depths and whether they're policy compliant, one of the tests is that it's so that the space isn't capable of subdivision into 2 stories. And just looking at the drawings, maybe officers just can confirm this to me. It looks like it would be very tight and certainly not amenable to make it into 2 stories, and therefore, even though it looks like a technical breach of the guided 3 to 4 meters, because this wouldn't be comfortably capable of subdivision into 2 stories. Is that how officers got comfortable with the depth in the end?
Yes, thank you for the question. Yes, that's exactly right. I'm happy to just bring the plans just to talk about the measurements and the depth. So the proposed swimming pool will be approximately 1.55 meters, and then the associated plant equipment will be 1.4 between the floor slabs to the ceiling and 1.9 to the top of the floor above. Members are correct. In terms of the subdividing and the size of basements that we usually allowed, it is all about whether there could be a double basement within the property. Given the proposed small amount of the plant room next to the swimming pool, our assessment was that it is justifiable in this case.
Can I also ask about the 1 metre of soil, which is an important mechanism for preventing flooding, particularly in this area? And the objector has said that it's very hard to see on the... Can you put up a slide that shows where that is or where it's missing, please?
I think the best way to look at it is from actually the photograph. So at the moment, the properties got the basement and the lower ground floor extension. The proposed basement would go below this light well over here. Because of the already existing hard standing, it would be quite difficult for us to then talk about the 1 meter, just because at the moment the water can be filtrated through the pavement. And in addition, given the proposed floor levels across the property, there will be different levels within the basement. So as part of the proposal, just over here, sorry, there we go. The proposal is to level the basement across the full property. Otherwise, we would require them to go even deeper within the soil. And also as part of the proposal, they're proposing a roof light on top of it, which would also, in terms of the construction, would be very difficult to provide the soil on top of that.
So you're saying they can't do it?
It was a very balanced decision, because that is a 1 meter, but in this case, it would be very difficult for them to do it.
Have we put in any conditions about managing the flooding risk?
Yes, we have recommended a flood risk assessment and SARS, but let me just double check. Yes, there's a condition 9. It talks about flood risk assessment and SATS, sustainable drainage strategy, to be submitted prior to commencement of works. And yes, and also the sewer pump to be installed within the new basement.
But that's just a standard condition for a basement of this type. So
yeah.
What are we doing to mitigate about the fact that there isn't the 1 metre of soil?
So let me just bring it to the officer's report. Yes, it's all about the dimension, the limited dimension of the increased area, and the conditions that we recommended, we were satisfied with that requirement.
Any comments on that? So I think what you're saying is the basement was built before without it, and because we're only adding to it, it's impossible for them to... So I'm not sure I understand what you're explaining. It's probably me.
That's absolutely fine. So in terms of at the moment, there is a hard-standing light well, and the water can't filtrate through it because there's a hard-standing, non-permeable surface. What they're proposing to do is a basement below that surface, so that area already can be permeable in terms of the water coming down. So in our assessment, given the existing light well and how the existing property and the basement going below, in this case, we wouldn't require the 1 meter of soil to go above that.
So for us, there is a technical breach against the policy because they're not providing the topsoil, but the other material considerations are that you have an existing site situation where there's hard sanding, an existing situation where you've got a basement at the same level, and to accommodate that topsoil, they'll have to dig lower in the garden, drop the levels, and then you'd only be able to do that where there isn't a roof light. So if, on balance, whilst there's that technical breach, the SUDS condition, the flood and drainage condition, we were comfortable with it.
So actually it would make the situation worse if we insisted on it?
I mean, not necessarily, because it is all a balance. We'd have to go for more
excavation.
There could potentially, yeah, you'd need to dig out deeper into the back. You'd have to go lower and have a step within the basement. And for us, on balance, it was better to accept that technical breach against that part of the topsoil on that limited area, or what we see as limited area, noting that the point of the policy is to do with managing flooding and drainage, managing surface water runoff, and opportunities for planting, which are relatively limited in that terraced area already. So that's where we got the balance to. We were comfortable with it overall.
Okay, and then just my last question is about the heat pump. So my understanding is it's not like an air conditioning unit. We don't require a noise survey. In fact, I don't think it even needs planning permission. Is that correct?
No, we still require the noise assessment. We don't require overheating statement, which that's something we require for the air conditioning units, but we still require for the air source heat pumps. We have recommended the standard conditions in terms of the noise level from it. It is on the roof level, so it's set away from the neighbouring properties.
So is there a noise assessment?
Let me... I'm just looking from comments from the environmental health officers who've commented, and there is a report presenting a baseline noise survey that was undertaken on site, and the detail of 2 items of the plant, 1 roof-mounted and 1 on the front light well. It does reference the existing plant based on the measurements location. They don't believe the measurement would have been adversely affected by the existing plant, and they've recommended the standard conditions that members can see in front of you.
Are there any other questions? Any other comments or thoughts about this one? Councillor Taylor-Smith.
Obviously, there's concern registered on the CTMP. So can we just get assurances that there will be full consultation with residents and obviously their views taken? I mean, the site looks quite a large site. So I assume that most of the work will all be contained within the site.
Yes, so as part of the recommended condition, we've recommended condition 5, which includes the construction traffic management plan. Is not uncommon for us to request the final CTMP, and as part of that final CTMP, they will have to have a consultation with the neighbouring properties, as well as other development within the area and how they're going to affect the construction.
Okay, Councillor Taylor-Smith? Okay, so colleagues, we need to move to a conclusion on this. We've heard objections, there are objections. Obviously, people are always concerned when this kind of level of work is proposed. I think I was concerned about the depth of this swimming pool, but I think having been through the plans, I feel satisfied with that. The air source heat pump has had a noise assessment, which our officers are comfortable with. And again, I kind of reiterate that once this thing is in operation, and if it can be heard, then it will be switched off by our enforcement officers. The 1 metre of soil, I do take the argument from Ms. Ray that actually it would be more harmful to residents if we insist on it, given the existing context. So I feel quite comfortable with the officer's recommendation. So I think we're ready to move to a vote. Can those in favour of the recommendation to approve the application, 14 Lansdowne Crescent, please show. And can those against please show? Thank you. So that's 4 to 1. Yeah. Thank you very much. We will move on, unless anybody... Okay. Is it Princess Gate? Yes. Okay. So the next application is at 14 Princes Gate. Ms. Robinson, please go ahead with your presentation whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, before members this evening is an application for the conversion of an existing ground floor garage into habitable accommodation, replacement of all UPVC windows and doors to painted double glazed timber units, addition of 3 new roof lights, 2 new windows to the rear elevation at first floor level, and enlargement of the existing windows on the rear elevation. Here is an aerial view of the site. This is the existing and proposed basement and ground floor plans, and the existing and proposed first and second floor plans, the existing and proposed roof plans, the existing and proposed front elevation, highlighting the garage doors and the windows, and the rear elevation, again highlighting the windows proposed. The offices, and the existing and proposed sections, apologies. So officers have assessed the application and have taken into consideration the loss of the garage and the increase in windows to the front and rear elevations. Officers are satisfied that the character and appearance of the property and the surrounding area would be acceptable. The enlargement and additional windows would be acceptable in terms of their character and appearance, and the change from existing UPVC to wood would be a benefit of the scheme, secured by condition 3. Living conditions would be considered to result in no harmful increase to a loss of privacy or a loss of outlook or a sense of enclosure. There has been an objection from the Council's Transport Officer. However, officers have balanced this objection within their report based on the fact that the existing garage is not of an acceptable size and dimension that would accord with our up-to-date current policies, and therefore to suggest to enter into a legal agreement to secure off-street, so permit-free parking would not be on balance warranted in this existing application. So officers are recommending approval of the application subject to the conditions listed in section 8 of the report, and that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. So we do have an objector. Jane, we will? Are you here? Not here? What should we do?
If she's not here, then the applicant can't speak.
The applicant can't speak. Okay. So we move straight to...
questions to officers.
Okay. Questions to officers then. Who would like to start?
Sorry, just to clarify, I didn't quite hear. So there won't be a permit-free, off-site permit granted on this in terms of loss of garage because of the size?
Yeah, that's correct. I struggled to get my words out when I was saying that.
If it was yes or no. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah, so there's no requirement for the applicant to enter into a legal agreement to secure off-street parking.
Okay.
Permit-free.
The reason is the garage is too small. You can't use it, so they're not parking a car there anyway. In fact, it's probably just dead space. I did go and have a look at this one because I've seen quite a number of applications in this muse. And I did look quite carefully at the surrounding. I mean, it's quite a big muse. I mean, there's three parts of it. And I thought it was actually quite appropriate what they were suggesting. It's very similar to the one that's next door. The PVC, I thought, it was definitely a benefit that was being removed. And I think it's turning the garage into usable space, which it obviously isn't right now. So actually, I felt quite comfortable with the design and the setting of it. So if no one's got any further comments, I think we can probably move to a vote. The recommendation from officers is to approve the application at 14 Princess Gate Mews. Can those in favour please show? Thank you very much. So that one is approved. We will move on to the Little House at 34 Oxford Gardens. Who is going to present that, please?
That's me.
Thank you, Julia. Please go ahead.
So again, I would like to draw members' attention to the addendum report. In addition to the addendum report, we realized there is an error in date in condition 2. Instead of 2023, should be 2013. So if members would be minded to grant planning permission, that's one of the additional alterations we would be seeking. This application is seeking planning permission to vary condition 4, which relates to hours of use, and 5, outdoor play area for a nursery on the previously granted permission. This is the site location plan and the area view. The nursery is located within this building. Then we've got the area view and the site photos of the existing outdoor play area. Members can see it with the arrows. And then we've got size photographs of the nursery. And then the proposal is to vary the hours of operation. So in terms of condition 4, it would allow them additional time in the morning and in the evening of each day of the weekday. And in terms of the opening of the outdoor play area, again, it would allow them to use it between 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. Monday to Friday. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we do have an objector, Mr. Johannes. Miss Johannes, I'm so sorry. Thank you for bearing with us. I know it's been a long wait, so thank you and welcome.
Thank you so much. My name is Hannah Johannes. This is Kim, my neighbor. So we're here to represent 34 Oxford Gardens. And the reason we're objecting is, and also we're also representing 40 other residents. And the reason we are objecting with the extension is because of the structure of the building and how the sound kind of affects us as living within the property. And, like having noise coming early in the morning and also afternoon has a great impact. So for example, and then so due to the structure of the building and inadequate sound insulation from the existing windows, noise from the nursery is not effectively contained and is clearly audible within our homes. So we live on the first floor immediately adjacent to the nursery, and the sound from both indoor activities and surrounding doors area is consistently heard inside our property. As a result, an extension of the nursery operating hours would prolong the period during which we are exposed to noise and activities. In addition, at the moment, we have the Spanish school and the playground that affects the noise level. We have the Portobello Market, which is very busy, and now with the tourists coming, and the parking area as well, very congested. As residents, we are really affected by the sound that comes from the surrounding areas. So additional, even though it's an hour, will have a great impact on us. So that's why we're objecting. And obviously, with the extension of hours would mean having parents' evening, afternoon activities, celebrations, and things like that, which will have an impact again on the residents. And within Oxford Gardens, as residents, we have people with disabilities, special need. I have a child with autism, and therefore any sound will have an impact on us, and therefore that's why I'm objecting. But I do support the nursery. It's nice to have a nursery. It's nice to have children use it, but it's just the hours. We just need peace in the evening and early morning as well. So that's the reason I'm objecting.
Thank you very much. So we don't have an applicant. I think we're the applicant. So do we have any questions for Ms. Johannes before we move to questions to officers? Okay. Shall we move to questions to officers? Can you just put up the hours of the hours that we're looking at? So we are proposing to change the hours by only 1 hour. Is that correct?
So the one on the top is the current condition.
Yeah.
So it's between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m.
Yeah.
And the proposal is to change it from 7:30 to 6:30. So it's half an hour in the morning and an hour and a half in the afternoon. And then condition 5, that's the play outdoor area. And the original application had a split hours, I'm guessing for the activities within the nursery. And the proposal is to change it between 10 to 5.
Okay, and can you just talk to us a little bit about how you assessed that and what the reasons were for the longer hours?
Perfect. So just to kind of give members the history, we have granted a temporary permission back in 2024, and that was only for 3 years for the extended hours. Unfortunately, the nursery has been closed since 2024, and they can't find an occupier because of that condition, and it's quite a restrictive condition for any future operating nursery. So in terms of our assessment, we have consulted our environmental health officers who commented that we actually haven't received any complaints from the nursery. There was a complaint about the alarm activation, but there wasn't anything in terms of the noise coming from the nursery, and they also review all the acoustic information provided by the applicant, and they were consent with the hours. Yeah, that's...
Okay, Councillor Taylor-Smith.
Yeah, so can we just dig in a little bit to the timing? So at the moment, when I was looking at 4.3, there seems to be multiple 10 to 20. There's sort of 10-minute breaks. So is that children are going in and out of the building rather than staying, open? Is my first question. And then my second question is in terms of acoustic insulation, because there's a reference here saying that they concluded that there wouldn't be, a problem with regard to indoor play as a result of the changes, and I just wondered if you could maybe just expand on that.
So in terms of the hours, they've been divided into different hours. That was the original condition when we've granted it in 2012. That's how we've granted. I think it's just condition 5 is about the outdoor activity, so how they can use it outside. Condition 4 is how they can access and use the nursery overall. So they will be picking up parents and parent evenings as well, included within that condition. In terms of the sound insulation condition, we, as officers, we haven't recommended that additional condition. However, it is within the members' discretion to add it in if you think it's necessary because of the opening hours. There is a difference then in terms of the assessment, what's there at the moment and what they're proposing in terms of the hours. So if members do think it would be necessary, we could potentially add an additional condition about internal sound insulation.
About insulation?
I don't have any information,
Okay.
obviously,
And
and that
just-
hasn't been proposed.
And because you put up pictures of the outdoor space, how many children will there be in this nursery?
So there is also a condition, condition 3, that there cannot be more than 100 pupils and 35 members of staff.
Sorry, say that again?
100 kids and 35 members of staff. However, given the size of the outdoor space, it was very unlikely 100 kids will go out there, which I think that comes with the hours what they can use
Can
it.
we do something about not having the kids outside at the end of the day?
Yep, we can verify.
Do we want 100 kids out there at 7
Well,
o'clock?
I was going to say that if my understanding is that we're seeking to change this till 10 till 5. So although they can arrive at 7:30, they're not allowed outside till 10, and vice versa. They have to come in at 5 o'clock, although they could be picked up by 6:30.
That's correct, yes.
That's correct, okay.
Yeah, that is correct. So, I mean, look, I think this is quite a small change in the greater scheme of a nursery. We need to protect our nurseries. Of course, everybody's always concerned about noise. I mean, actually, the outdoor space is pretty small. So I just wonder really how much noise is going to be coming from there. I mean, it's a nursery. There's going to be people coming and going. But I don't really see how we can refuse this application on the basis of what's been presented to us. So I think we can move to a conclusion, unless anyone's got any other comments. So the recommendation is to approve the application at Oxford Gardens. Can those in favour please show? Thank you. So that is approved. Right, so we're going to move now to 186 Brompton Road. Thank you very much for bearing with us. It's been a long afternoon. Who's going to present this case? Ms. Robinson, please, whenever you are ready.
Thank you, Chair. So before members this evening is an application for the installation of one emergency generator to the rear courtyard of 180 to 186 Brompton Road. Here is a site location plan and an aerial view of the site. These are some existing photographs of the site. You can see there's some existing plant equipment in the kind of orange area of those photographs. This is the existing and proposed floor plan, the existing elevations, and the proposed elevations. You can see there on the rear of the flat roof, the proposed generator. So the officer's report clearly outlines the assessment of this proposal, and in summary, the proposed development would provide one emergency generator that would be used only in the event of an emergency for medical equipment, specifically, I think, for an MRI machine associated with the medical centre. The proposal would preserve the character and appearance of the conservation area and have limited impacts on the living conditions of neighbouring properties, subject to the recommended conditions set out in the report. So it's officer's recommendation to approve the application subject to the conditions set out in the report, specifically the ones relating to noise and air quality, to ensure compliance with the development plan. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So can I please ask Mr. Burkett and Mr. Haggard to address the committee whenever they are ready?
I'm Simon Burkett, objecting as a local resident today. This proposal for a generator in plain sight is unprecedented in the conservation area. To my knowledge, the only generator approved in recent years is in the basement of Harrods, with a flue extending above their main roof. In relation to the current application, further written representations were submitted last week, raising specific concerns about matters that had not been addressed in the main officer's report or through proposed conditions of consent. These included impact on living conditions of occupiers of neighbouring properties, the impact on the character and appearance of the conservation area. Crucially, for a generator application, there is no information on why it's needed, why it can't be put in the basement, when it would be used, and what sort of generator is proposed. We don't even know where the fuel tank or exhaust flue would be located. We've also pointed out that fire safety provisions apparently still need to be captured in a full fire strategy. Please refuse this application. Nothing can get around the fact that vital information is missing and the generator is an eyesore. If the committee is minded to approve, I strongly request that additional conditions are imposed to ensure that the generator will not cause nuisance for people living in the area and can only be used as genuine emergency backup for clinical medical equipment. Thank you. I'll pass to Mr. Haggard.
Good evening, Chair. Thank you. And I'm Melville Haggard, representing the Knightsbridge Association. We object to the proposed location of the emergency generator and do not agree that the proposal would, quote, preserve the character and appearance of the conservation area and have limited impact on living conditions in the area. The visual impact of the generator plus fuel tank and exhaust flue amounts to a suite of quasi-industrial equipment dumped at the rear of 53 to 59 Cheval Place. This does not fit well in a residential conservation area. The report makes no mention of the location of the generator's fuel tank or exhaust flue. We note, however, paragraph 6.7 of the officer's report states that the submission does not, quote, fully assess emissions or the potential impact on local air quality. The costs of moving the generator to a less conspicuous location are modest, set against the benefits of improved visual impact, noise reduction, and improved air quality in a conservation area. We ask that you take these factors into consideration when making your determination. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now I'd like to ask Mr. Kratz to address the committee. You also have 3 minutes, and whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair and members. My name is Philip Kratz. I'm a planning lawyer by background, but please don't hold that against me. I've been doing planning since 1980, and I've been advising the medical people behind this proposal for a number of years. The use of these premises for medical purposes was before the committee and approved last week. It was an opportunity to obtain the premises, and for the avoidance of any doubt, the use has not commenced, and the generator has been delivered to site, but it is not installed or connected, and it's still in its wrappers straight from the manufacturer. Due to the nature of the development inside the building, and the host building is a 1960s 7-story building, charitably described by your officers as having a neutral impact on the conservation area. But due to the nature of the medical uses, an emergency or backup power system is absolutely essential. There's not just MRI and CT scans inside, there are day surgery operating theatres and recovery rooms as well. And the prospects of what would happen in the exceedingly unlikely event of a power outage just don't bear thinking about, and I think are self-evident. Your officers have been very careful in applying the policies and have obtained all of the information they want, and they have quite rightly identified the 2 key issues as being the impact on the conservation area and the impact on the living conditions, and in particular the air quality for local residents. But of course that is largely informed by the emergency nature of the equipment. The GLA's London Plan guidance on air quality confirms that backup plants installed for emergency and life safety power supply, such as diesel generators, are excluded from the calculation of predicted building emissions. Normally, it's expected that the use of these generators for anything other than an emergency and operational testing, less than 50 hours per year, would be prevented by planning condition. And again, for the avoidance of doubt, there is no objection whatsoever to such a condition being imposed, again, if it weren't self-evident. And the benchmark given in there of 50 hours per year, I'm advised that the annual running of the machinery for maintenance and testing could probably be measured in minutes rather than hours over the course of a year. The conditions that have been suggested by your officers safeguard the local residents and the interests of the borough as well, and I commend them to you and happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mackover.
Thank you to both to both sides. This is quite unusual case for us, and there seems to be two elements. One is what's it actually doing and what's the alternative, and secondly, what it looks like. It's very unusual to see such a large piece of industrial equipment for this facility. I don't see a lot of these quite visible emergency plant generators around the West End. I'm assuming that they're mainly, if they are existing at all, that they're in basements. So what amount of alternative product was explored, both in battery backup or in smaller modular generators, was explored, and is this the smallest possible unit that would support the power needs in an emergency? That's the first question.
Every possible backup was explored. This is the industry standard. I say industry, of course, we're really talking about quasi-NHS type use. And they're not necessarily in basements, because I'm aware of a number that I've been involved with, for example, just across the border in Harley Street. They're not typically as large as this, but don't be misled by the wrapping. The unit is somewhat smaller than is visible from the photograph. I say it's in situ, so you have an idea of its scale and bulk, but once the wrappings are removed, it's somewhat smaller, and it is actually an integral part of the proposal that there be some visual screening as well, and that would be wrapped up in one of the conditions that your officers have recommended to you.
And in terms of the output, it's not clear from the papers here, what is the fuel that it runs on, and where is that fuel stored?
The fuel is diesel, and it's relatively small amounts of diesel. So, in essence, it would run for hours on a jerry can full. So there's not a large diesel tank. There's no issues of storage of a combustible material, and the quantities involved are very small. Back to the context where it's not expected to run this at all, apart from routine maintenance for a few minutes every year.
And finally, on the generation, if it's going to be used so infrequently, or maybe not at all, but not expected to run for hours and hours, it's just if there is a cut to to not put people in danger who are having a procedure or a machine that's operating. How was battery backup ruled out?
Currently, the battery options are not acceptable for medical use. It has to be something which is has a certified track record. If that became available during the lifetime of this project, and that timescale might be decades to when it is highly likely it would be replaced. but that would be a decision at that time. The decision at this time, from an operational point of view, and obviously patient safety is the single most important factor, is that this is the thing that preserves patient safety.
Thank you, and I'll let my colleagues probably want to talk about visual, but how was it, apart from the age of the building that you mentioned, how is it that something couldn't have been devised to be underground with ventilation up, but how is it not able to be in underground space?
It would make it far more difficult to replace in the event that cleaner technology became available, and this is again an operation where those sorts of things are under constant review. There is a basement available, but the ventilation for it would be far more intrusive than putting it on this balcony and seeking to screen it. Like I said, there is a proposal to screen it as well, and that could include some soft screening.
Do you mind if I pick up on one more thing, Chair? You said there is a basement available, but it would be more intrusive to put it in the basement. This is the only thing that you'd probably see if you did put one in the basement would be some sort of exhaust extract, but that would only run if the generator ran, and it would look much smaller than the generator.
Yeah, I was only referring to the need to exhaust it and for ventilation for it. So yes, obviously if it's underground, a bit like the swimming pool in the application just now, I wouldn't know there's a swimming pool inside the building. I wouldn't know necessarily there's a generator inside the building, but I would be aware of the the mechanical and other ventilation systems that would be necessary for it.
Thank you, Councillor Mackover. Anybody else? Councillor Taylor-Smith.
Yes, so thank you. Yes, we mentioned screening. I mean, it does, looking at that photograph, accepting the finished product's not going to be wrapped in orange. I mean, it really is in your face. It also looks as though it's floating. So I suppose my first question is, can it be sort of tucked away better than the position you've got? And secondly, what could you do for screening? Because it does look pretty awful. You know, could you consider living walls or things to make it look more aesthetically pleasing?
On the height of it, yes. I mean, it's on a glorified pallet that it's been delivered on. So when it's installed in that general location, it will be lower. But that acknowledges the fact that there's 200 or 300 mil of glorified pallet that it stands on. And the screen that we had in mind, it effectively stands on what in layman's terms might be called a balcony. And there's some railings facing the residential properties opposite. It was intended to have not necessarily a living wall as such, technically, but some wooden screening, probably with some planters as well, to completely soften the perception of it from the residential properties.
Thank you. Any other questions? Questions to officers? Councillor Marshall.
Well, I suppose just to follow up on the screening, is that sorry?
Yes, I mean, we've just heard that the quantities of diesel fuel being kept on site are going to be minimal. But even so, I don't see anything referring to any kind of fire risk assessment connected to the generator. Obviously, it's a building with a particularly sensitive evacuation plan, and if there's even a small quantity of diesel fuel that's posing a fire hazard on the outside of the building, that might need to be mitigated in some way.
Yeah, so the application's been supported by a planning fire statement as required by CD 16, and then there would be kind of regulations that precede planning that would cover off kind of other aspects of fire safety. So officers have considered what's been submitted, the application and the kind of scope of the application, and are content that what we're approving would be acceptable.
Again, just the officers, what sort of conditioning could you have on for screening?
Yep, so we could include a requirement for the applicant's details of the acoustic screening. It would be quite a standard condition that you could possibly delegate wording to us specifically, but yeah, we could ask them to provide details of that screening prior to kind of the full installation of the generator.
Councillor Mackover.
Yes, I'm looking at the picture of two officers. I'm looking at the picture. I'm not massively aware of the structure that it's sitting on. It seems to be more than a pallet. It looks like it's some sort of deck. So, can officers explain what actually is directly below that? Is that at ground level? Is it in a position? I can't actually see the dimensions really of it. Is it in a position where it could be made more acceptable by coming off whatever sort of platform it's sitting on? Or simply, what is it sitting on? Is that a ground level, or is that some sort of platform?
I'm not quite sure what it's sitting on in the photographs. They're obviously just photographs of the site. They're not scaled. We don't have any details in them. But on the proposed side elevation, you can see how the generator would be sited and the kind of height of that acoustic screen next to it. It could be that if you're worried from the perspective that photograph has been taken, you could, in the details condition, ask for the screening to be brought round the side as well, so that it covers it on both sides of the generator.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Well, it's not really to officers. It's probably just to as a discussion amongst ourselves. Actually, Max wanted to go, I think. So you go first.
I was just looking at that same image and the proximity of the windows. Has the flue or exhaust location been assessed for the proximity to residential windows, air intakes and other amenity space? Given the four objections that specifically raise this.
Yep. So the application has been assessed based on the information that's been provided by officers. The Council's Air Quality Officer and the Council's Environmental Health Officers have given their observations on the application, have considered what's been proposed before them, and have asked for conditions to be provided or to be appended to the decision. One of them, at condition 6, requires further kind of details and full specification sheets for the unit. That includes the kind of manufacturing and modelling, thermal capacity, stack height. It also requires kind of emission certificates, and it has a kind of a maximum amount of emissions that would have to be complied with. So based on condition 6 and the consultation responses from environmental health and air quality, officers are content that those considerations have been addressed within the report and the submission.
Okay, thank you. And just one.
I've got a question. I mean, I feel really uncomfortable about this. I just think this is a massive piece of plant sat on one of our streets, and I just don't know why we would want that there. I understand that it's, a medical facility. I understand it's necessary. It's a big building. I kind of hope that there's an alternative place for this. But I guess my question is can you think of another example where in our borough we've allowed, look, I know it's wrapped in orange. I know it's not going to be quite as visible as it is in this picture, but it's still a large piece of kit. Can you think of another example where we've allowed something like this in our streets?
I can't recall every single application that we've had recently or in the past or that's currently submitted. We assess every application on its own merits, and the officers report details in this instance, and given the circumstances and requirement of the generator, how we feel that it is compliant. That's all I can really say on that point.
I mean, look, I understand the need for the medical facility, but I just can't see how we can say this conserves our conservation area or enhances it, and it just doesn't. I mean, I think it's just encouraging people to put large amounts of plant in our residential streets. Councillor Mack.
I've got a suggestion, Chair, and I know that it's not a usual process for us, but if we don't like it, we can find reasons and we can refuse it. But I think until we really understand how it's cited, it's hard really to come fully to that conclusion. There's an image in the objectors' letters which shows red lines and covering up certain parts of brickwork and certain windows. I don't know whether you're probably looking at the same one. Okay, and it seems to be there's some sort of brick or rendered return where the new flue seems to be poking up from it, and I don't know what that structure is, and whether it's difficult to see at the different angles. So, if I had seen these pictures much earlier, I probably would have wanted to go and visit myself to try and understand. But my real case is, it feels inappropriate in this location, and to understand two things. One is there a better location for it? And secondly, how could it effectively be screened if it has to be there? Is there any reduction in height? We don't have all the dimensions, and we don't have a real idea of the location. I wonder whether, Chair, you think it could be a deferral to see it in, and to see how it could be screened if it could be made acceptable.
What would you ask for in the and when it comes back? What would you want to see?
Well, to see it for me would be to see how it could sit. Actually, looking at it from a resident's point of view rather than from a photograph. Does it block any resident's light? We don't know the direct dimensions. We hear it's going to be a bit smaller than what we see in the pictures. We know it might be a bit lower because it's sitting on some sort of pallet. But just looking about where it does sit, but I may be misinterpreting these unverified images. So that's why I can see the case the case can be made for refusing it, but it might be possible that it could be lowered and screened in some way that would be that would reduce the risk of objections or harm from its location. But I can't tell from the images that we got.
I just come back, Councillor Smith.
Can I just actually come in and endorse what Councillor Macko was saying? I mean, I think the basic requirement of having an emergency generator for this facility with proper acoustic shrouding, I can see the argument for that. But based upon what we've been presented, there is no way of checking exactly where the location, what the impact is, save for the late objector's photographs, which gives us a certain sense. So I think it would be really important for us to understand exactly what the size and location and screening could look like.
Let's do that. What do you think? Councillor Marshall, Councillor.
Is this a genuine resilience requirement, for example, NHS or CQC mandated?
Well, I guess you can ask it.
I didn't see anything in the submission that told us categorically that it was a requirement for the NHS or any particular in the supporting documents. I don't know if you did, Jessica. No.
So I think I'm kind of getting a strong feeling that
screening dimensions.
Yes, yeah, I think that's clear. We can take that away.
requirements are.
Yeah, thank you. So I think you still need to vote on the proposal. Oh, I'll leave it to Lorna.
it looks like we're heading towards a deferral. So we should just have a proposer and a seconder to defer. Otherwise, would be having to vote on the recommendation, which is not what we want to do. So, yes, if we could just have a proposer, seconder. Yeah.
And I know we have to consider applications given the information that we have, but I kind of feel some concern that this is an easy way out and that there is a better solution that's in the building, but I guess we can't really ask for that type of information, right?
Well, if your conclusion is this proposal isn't good enough, you would refuse it based on the harm identified. If you're deferring it, we will collect that information up for you and re-present it to you with the same recommendation.
So I'd like a proposer then. Councillor Mackover would like to propose, and a seconder. Councillor Shoreham would like to second that. So we are voting on the proposal to defer this application because we need more information, which we've defined with the officers. I'm not going to go through all of them again. Can those in favour please show? Thank you. So that application is deferred, pending further information and perhaps some visits from us. Thank you very much. So we will now move to, just get my papers in order. Haythrop College.
Yes, Councillor Nuttall has to leave.
What?
Councillor Nuttall is going to recuse himself.
Oh, yes. No, not from this. Oh, yes, you are from this one. Yes. I'm sorry, I'm losing track. Please.
I'm recusing myself from
Yes, good. Okay, and there's no presentation because we have no speakers. I'm so sorry. We are ready to restart. This is an application at Haythrop College, 23 to 24 Kensington Square. There is no presentation because we don't have speakers. So we will move straight to a debate and discussion about the planning application in front of us and any questions to officers. So I will ask the first question. Obviously, this is part of a much bigger site. I think I've sat on one of the planning applications in the past. Very familiar with the site, very familiar with these houses. Obviously, we're all very keen to know what's going on in the main site. As we've read in the objections, everybody in Kensington Square would like to know what's happening with the site. But that's not what we're here to discuss today. We're here to discuss quite a modest adjustment to the glass and the sash windows, removals of a brick WC in the rear garden, and some reconfiguration work. So these are relatively minor. So even though it's part of this much bigger site that everyone's interested in, actually what we're being asked to look at is something reasonably small, and there is already planning permission on this site for the townhouses. So does anybody have any questions for officers? Is there anything you'd like to tell us about this that I haven't mentioned?
No, I think you've covered the point about the kind of the larger scheme that sits over the larger site than this, but it is just a small part of the kind of wider scheme, and as set out in part 4 of the officer's report, it's not considered to have a significant impact on kind of that major development proposal or its kind of development potential.
So it looks like it has many objections, but actually people are just making comments on the fact that they'd like to know what's happening with the site. So I think we can move straight to a decision on this. And the recommendation from officers is to approve the planning application at Haythrop College. Can those in favour please show? Thank you very much. And we will also have to make a decision on the listed building consent, because this is a listed building. So the recommendation is to grant listed building consent at Haythrop College, 23 to 24 Kensington Square. Can those in favour please show? Thank you very much. So that one is also approved. So we will move swiftly on to, Councillor Mackover, welcome back. 110 Lancaster Road. Lancaster Road, not in this pack. Lancaster Road. This is a council building, and the application is for maintenance work to the windows mainly, which does not look in any way controversial. In fact, possibly doesn't even need planning permission. So I think we can probably move straight to a decision on this one unless anyone's got any comments. So the recommendation is to approve the application at 110 Lancaster Road. Can those in favour please show? Thank you very much. So that one is also approved. Next on the list, 275 Ladbroke Grove. Again, this is a council building at 275 Ladbroke Grove. And again, this is for the replacement of windows, double glazing. Again, not really sure if planning permission is required, but probably shouldn't say that. We have got an application before us. We do need to make a decision. So the recommendation from Officer Councillor... the recommendation is to approve the planning application at 275 Ladbroke Grove. Can those in favour please show? Thank you very much. So that one is also approved. 1 Pembridge Square, also in your North pack. This is the steps to the library, I think, isn't it? Is that what it is?
That's correct, yes.
Yeah. See if I can find it, so I know that be sure that what we're looking at. Why can't I find it? Okay. Here we are. Okay, 1 Pembridge Square. Proposal relates to the repair of historic steps up to the front door of the building. This is our library, so I mean, I can't really see why this is controversial. Very nice to be repairing the steps. Can we move to a decision? Oh yes, please, Councillor Taylor-Smith, please go ahead.
Simple question, why do we have to have an application for this? It's a repair to a set of steps.
It's a listed building consent. Because it's a listed building, they require the consent. It's not a planning permission as such.
Well, I mean, the steps from memory, obviously, because libraries used to come under me as lead member. It's nothing architecturally significant. They were a later addition, but okay, well, if we have to do it, we have to do it.
Okay, so the recommendation is grant permission for the listed building consent at 1 Pembridge Square. Can those in favour please show? Thank you. So that one is also approved. Now we will move on to Sydney Street, which is in the other pack. Councillor Taylor-Smith, I think you need to... No, it's not in the other pack. Sorry. It is in the other pack. You go sit at the back of the classroom. Right, so this is... Now there's 2 applications for this one. I'll just see which one we're talking about. Okay, so there's the back extension and the alterations to the metal stair, and then there is a second one which is about the mansard roof. So we're going to talk about the internal and external alterations, including the metal stair to the front light well, the enclosure of the small open space beneath the ground floor entrance stairs. I mean, I did read this very carefully, and you know, my conclusion was that it was a pretty modest extension. Thought it was a much better use of space, and I didn't really have any questions. But does anybody have questions for officers about this? So the recommendation is to approve this alteration and infill at the back of 41 Sydney Street in the basement flat. Can those in favour please show? Thank you. It is 4. And we also need to consider the listed building consent for 41 Sydney Street basement flat. The recommendation is to approve the listed building consent. Can those in favour please show? Thank you very much. So that one is approved. Next up, we have the construction of the mansard roof at the same address. So just, I guess this one is a little bit more visible from the street, and it is a listed building. So I think under normal circumstances, we would be, we've become more permissive about mansard roof extensions, given some of the changes we've seen. But with a listed building, we'd probably be a little bit more circumspect. However, in this particular terrace, there are many of them, I think I'm right in saying. And actually, it would be very much in keeping with this listed terrace. So I was quite comfortable with the proposal. Anybody got any comments or questions? No, so I think we can probably move to a decision on this one. The recommendation is to approve the planning application, the second planning application at basement flat 41 Sydney Street. Can those in favour please show? Thank you very much. That one is approved. And then we have a listed building consent that goes with that. And the recommendation is to approve the listed building consent at 41 Sydney Street. Can those in favour please show? Thank you very much. So that one is also approved. We will move swiftly on to Gloucester Road, 118. Councillor Taylor-Smith, you can return. Okay, so we have here another shroud for a building site on Gloucester Road, again a very prominent street in our borough. And I guess all of the discussions we had earlier on in this meeting probably still apply. Does anybody have any comments? Councillor Mackover, it is your ward.
Yes, just at the edge of my ward. There's a building. There's a building next door, which is the main work that's going on, and that already has some sort of shroud. But the image in the pack by the applicant shows the whole of the corner building actually being covered. So, what is the work that is going on that corner building, and how are officers going to check that whatever work goes on, that the scaffolding doesn't stay up longer? In each case, I think we should be making sure that the conditions are that the shroud the advertising consent should last only as long as the works and no longer than the consent. You probably don't have the answers to exactly what they're doing, but that's why I think, like we said before, can we put on some sort of condition, or if it has to be an informative, which says that at any time the applicant should be able to inform the council where they are in the progress of the works, because we don't want to find that people are not starting the works for a year and then a month before the application, the temporary permission expires, that people start a little bit of work and then apply for another year, because there's just a lot of these about now. Yeah.
Yep, so the application in the officer's report in the relevant planning history is for the construction of a side extension with 3 self-contained studio apartments, replacement of open fire scare enclosed escape stairs. So that was granted at the end of 2024. So there'll be a condition on that application to ensure that they started works within 3 years of that development being approved. And then we've got a condition on this application, condition 6, which requires for only a limited period until 23rd of the 4th, 2027. It could be that we could include a second sentence to that condition that would also provide for if the development was completed before that date that the scaffold shroud was removed. If you
see, and it's getting late in this session, but the application that you referred to, which was the creation of the new small units, that's actually the area that's already scaffolded with material already on it. And so I'm just questioning whether there is what the work is that's actually going on the main building. If you see on the image, you see that it's a post office on the corner building where the shroud is shown, but that's not. I don't think that's where the creation of the new units is going, because the new units, I think, are the area that's already got a shroud on it, which is between where they're showing the image plus and between there and the tree.
Yeah, I can see the photo in the back of the pack that you're referring to. I'm unsure, if I'm honest with you, as to the red line boundary extent that was granted for the 2023 permission. I could check that quickly if you wanted to, but
Yeah.
it would take
I mean,
me a few minutes to find the documents.
Yeah,
and
I'm
bring them up.
just wanting just from my memory, but from what you described, but from my memory, there might be something going on in that building which might have been a top floor flat being put on. But the bit that you read out, that's what I'm trying to make sure it relates to the right application, or it may well have been the same application. But if you could just check that, because we want to make sure we're not putting a shroud up on a building that's not being worked on. But there's no wrong answer. It's just I want just clarity on that.
Yeah, if you just give me 2 seconds,
Okay.
I'll find it for you.
I'm just looking at.
Yep, so the original application includes the whole red line boundary that is that correlates with the red line boundary on this application form. So it is likely that there are works within the whole building. It may be that they're shorter than the works where the current scaffolding is, therefore that's why it wasn't put up at the same time, but I'm confident now I can see the site plan that it does relate to the same red line boundary.
It's just odd because there's with those two parts of it, looking at the description that this relates to, there is no work to happen on that building because the sort of the metal fire escape and the side extension with 3 self-contained studio apartments, that is the bit that's already scaffolded. So I'm just curious why they want a shroud on a part of the building that's actually not being worked on.
Obvious, I think.
Thank you for bearing with me. Yep, so we've just conferred, and the red line boundaries are the same. It could be that the works that this shroud is, or the scaffolding is to facilitate, could be things that weren't included in the description, but things like redecorating the front of the building, replacement windows, things like that to kind of finalise the building for its new use or upgrade it in any way. And although it isn't ideal, there isn't a prerequisite that planning permission or works are required for a scaffolding to be erected, and they would need to have kind of like the relevant scaffolding licenses and things like that in place. So on considering all of those things, the scaffolding, for the reasons set out in the report, would be considered acceptable in this circumstance, and with those conditions to limit its longevity.
Right. So I think you said that that you mentioned a date, but that the date was until May, but we're being asked to grant for a whole year. Did you say something? When you were just talking before, you said that the works.
Yeah. So that date, the 23rd of the 4th, 2027, has been taken from the application form. So that's the date that the applicant has applied for a year up until that date.
Oh, I see. So it was a year from.
They probably put the dates of when they submitted the application in there.
4, 5, 6, so two months different. Okay. Right. Well, look. I think it probably backs the condition that we want to have, which is that the works have got to be real and progressing in line with the permission that we're given. But it will be upsetting if it turns out that the works are all in the building that's next to it, but they're putting an advertising hoarding up on this one without a real justification, because to us the visual disturbance needs to be offset against, obviously the fact that there's some sort of shroud to protect people from the work that they're doing. But we don't have more information. It's a sort of a temporary thing. So I'm not going to go any further on it.
Kim.
Endorsing what Councillor Mackover says on this sort of thing. I mean, these are now multiplying. We've obviously seen 2. I mean, my first question is on illumination. Why do we have to illuminate it? I mean, what possible benefit is there on illumination apart from making it a more value advertisement? I mean, we're quite strict in terms of illuminated signs on residential. And I'm also very conscious of the hoo-ha that we had on wanting to put an advertising hoarding on the embankment when you go around the corner at Lotts Road. The amount of, and yet we're putting very large-scale illuminated adverts on our buildings. This might not be specific for this particular case, but I do think we need to have a clear understanding of what the policy will be on this, incorporating issues that, as say Councillor Mackover has said about, people have got to be doing work in a timely manner if we're going to allow them to put an advertisement on the shrouding on a building. But what are we saying about illumination? Are we just going to allow this to go all night long?
So we've assessed it in terms of impact on amenity, and highways have assessed it on impact.
Are we allowing it to be illuminated all 24 hours?
If members were minded to, you could suggest that we add a condition to restrict the illumination hours.
We're not restricting it. Okay, we're not restricting it.
Not as far as I'm aware.
And I guess the difference between this one and the other one was the other one felt like more of a sensitive space, so that's why there's no illumination there. But because this is on Cromwell Road, basically.
But this is...
It's your planning judgment. If you believe this to be a sensitive location, very prominent, it's at a crossroads, it may be that you come to a different view or you add different conditions. That's well within your rights to do so.
I'm kind of worried about what Councillor Mackover has said about... are we... Can we give permission for less time?
I mean, you can. If you think that condition is reasonable, necessary to make it, then absolutely.
I mean, look, we're spending a lot of time on it. I think we're helping understand the impact of the policy. Yeah. In this particular case, it doesn't seem to be facing... It seems to be facing...
Well, it's Cromwell Road.
Well, actually...
No, it's not on Cromwell
Road. It's right opposite. There is a residential accommodation opposite it. And so I would be... I think in other places in Gloucester Road, we have restricted illumination till sort of 10 at night, is it?
So the facade, this is actually on facing the Cromwell Road.
Well, that faces...
It's actually on Gloucester Road.
It's on Gloucester, and it faces
Cromwell.
It faces some flats opposite, but the other thing I was just going to say on dates is in condition 6, it says the advertisement shall be limited only until 23rd of April, but we're also granting it for 12 months. So that would be, there's a bit of a confusion there. So we should first of all, we should limit the time to 12 months or 24th of April. 23rd of April, because we're giving 2 dates, which is confusing. But secondly, we could look, because it's facing residences opposite in Gloucester Road. We generally cut it back illumination in facing houses, so it's not facing the main Cromwell Road.
Yeah, I think that's clear. What we can do. Because it says a maximum period of 12 months and the date has been taken from their application form, and I'm not concerned about that deviation, but with your condition it's justified in terms of the impact to visual amenity and general amenity that you want to restrict the illumination. That's justified, we can add that. And if you do want to reduce the time period, again, that is within your gift to do so. So we can let you propose that.
I think I probably would. I mean, based on what you said.
I am genuinely open-minded.
Sorry, come back and ask, why are we doing this? Are we doing it to facilitate building? Are we doing it because we think it's a great idea to have adverts on it? I mean, you know, I'm just trying to sort of understand the logic behind.
I guess we're doing it because it's allowed, because it's a temporary shroud. It's allowed under planning law.
So we're doing it purely because
for people
it's
to
a
apply
temporary
for it.
shroud. But it doesn't have to be illuminated. We could say it shouldn't be illuminated. I mean, effectively, if you're having a shroud, it's to cover a building during work. And they're not going to be working at night.
No. Yeah, so the shroud itself doesn't need any kind of planning permission.
Well,
people put them up all the time.
Lighting on it. I mean,
whilst they've got it up, people quite often like to put these adverts on. And we historically have been very resistant to them. Like for a long time, members will remember. It's why every shroud application comes to committee so that you retain oversight of them. But we have lost some appeals over time on externally illuminated advert shrouds on certain areas, depending on their size, etc. So we have got more comfortable with them over time, but that doesn't take away from your assessment, your judgment on each case on its merits, the particular site circumstances, and the two key things of visual amenity and public safety. And if you think there is harm to amenity, you are justified to refuse it or add additional conditions. It's within your gift to do that.
I think it's a residential area, and it might be a busy residential area, but it's still residential.
Yeah. I mean, it would be, if it was consistent with the hours of illumination elsewhere in Gloucester Road, then I can see that would be a reasonable thing to do. Because if others are restricted, I think it's until 10 p.m. At the one up the road that we did. So that would feel a fair outcome. And some sort of condition, or we'll get the wording right in the end for all of these, which talks about there needs to be a need for it to be able to continue, and if there isn't a need, it needs to come down.
I think that's more difficult because we can't link it to a permission. It's just an advert consent, and it's only those two things. But we can still monitor it. As instructed.
So expectation of monitoring to ensure compliance with the works aligning with the end of the period, and in this case to align the hours with the other Gloucester Road consented advertisement.
But we'd need a time from you, I think, to make sure it's enforceable. So that'd be helpful.
Yeah, I can't look it up as quickly as you can, but I think it might be.
It doesn't have planning permission. It's just a refurbishment. Why is it going to take a year?
12 months.
I agree.
Should we defer it for
I kind of think
clarity?
so. And I sort of think if we approve this one, who else is going to come here
Well,
wanting a shroud?
honestly, they're opening up, and this will be extremely valuable. I mean, the amount of rental that you'll have on these things. If I think of what we're doing on the small side, this is prime Cromwell Road, full size. You know, we're probably talking, hundreds of thousands of pounds in terms of income. For somebody who might be wanting to paint a window.
It's tricky with any kind of income. You can't take that into account. Again, you could defer it for additional information with regard to illumination.
For me, the unanswered questions are, looking at the permission that it says that it's scaffolding for, then that's the bit of the building behind that's already scaffolded. So this one, what work does it relate to? And it may be that it's just that there is a different permission that just hasn't been quoted here. They come back and they say how long it's going to take, and then we're in a correct position. But we don't have quite the amount of information we need to answer on this one.
I think that's fair, and I think anybody can go and put this up if we don't ask these questions. Yes?
I think you can defer on the illumination point, but to get the details of what work it relates to is a bit more challenging, because the shroud itself doesn't need it. It's just the actual advert. That's the only thing you can consider on 2 points only: visual amenity, public safety. So all that information about what work it relates to, I completely understand, but we can't really secure that for you. So it would be the details of the illumination to defer to, and you may just want to condition it and restrict it if you're confident that it's not acceptable.
Because we don't know the time. Look, I'm suggesting, because it's a bit confusing now, to defer to check on the appropriate hours for the area, but also because of the period of 12 months that they're asking for, because it says this is to do the works in planning commission, blah blah blah. We just want to confirm where they are in those works, because I think that scaffolding the works have been going on for nearly a year already for those building of those studio flats. And then, with the questions answered, it can come back.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
All right. So the recommendation, no, the proposal. We need a proposer. Who would like to propose?
I'll propose to defer.
Councillor Mackover is proposing to defer, and a seconder, please. Councillor Taylor-Smith. So we're going to vote on the proposal to defer this application pending more information. Can those in favour of the proposal please show? Thank you very much. So that one is deferred. Right.
Sounds like a great
28 Moore Street.
One more. Let's do another one.
28 Moore Street.
What's this Moore Street? This is sad, isn't it?
Sorry, it's just getting difficult to find these now. Right, here it is.
More plant.
28 Moore Street. I wondered whether you could put up a couple of pictures. Do you have them? You don't have them? We can't see them? No? Ah, okay. Okay, because I have seen pictures of, I don't know if everyone has seen them. I have seen pictures of the additional story and the back of the house, which I actually found extremely helpful in seeing what's going on, because it's hard to see from just the floor plans. I felt quite satisfied from the pictures that particularly I think there were comments about the roof terrace. That roof terrace is now not where, it's not in the place where the objection is saying it was. Can you just clarify that, Jessica?
Yeah. Do you mean the roof terrace to, it's more kind of a terrace to the back of the property rather than being at roof level, yeah.
Because it makes it sound here in the objection like it's a big roof terrace, but I did double check about that. And the additional story was fine because it's in a terrace, and then there was some comments about the infill extension at the back, which is pretty modest and at ground floor level. So there was quite a lot of discussion in the objection about how it was going to impact their light. And I don't know whether you can just tell us a little bit about that objection and the impact on the neighbours with that ground floor extension.
Yeah, so as you've referred, there's a kind of lower ground floor and a ground floor, or ground and first, however you want to refer to it. And the way that they're staggered means that they're not going to cause undue impact on the neighbouring properties. It's quite a typical arrangement of built form along the back of that terrace anyway, so officers have regard to that in the report and have found that it wouldn't be so harmful as to warrant refusal of the application.
And I also felt that it was, I mean, there's a lot of examples of this kind of infill extension in this area, so I wasn't concerned about it. But does anyone else have any comments? In which case, I think we can probably move to a decision. So the recommendation from officers is to approve this application at 28 Moore Street. Can those in favour please show? Thank you very much. So that's 5 in favour of an approval. So that application is also approved. So that concludes our business for tonight. Time is 20 to 8. Thank you very much, officers, colleagues.
And thank you, Chairman.
I declare the meeting closed.
Thank you.